They say a mother's love is the purest thing in the world. But what happens when that love becomes a weapon? What happens when the woman who gave your husband life decides to take yours away? Brookfield was a quiet town where everyone knew your name. I was 26, working at a bookstore and believing in love. Then I met Ethan Miller at a friend's wedding. When our eyes met, I felt a quiet, rare thing: safety. The first 6 months were like a beautiful song. We walked by the lake every Sunday, dreaming of the future. "You are my home, Lucy," he whispered, giving me a ring. I believed him. I didn't know the ring came with hidden conditions. 2 weeks after we married, his phone rang late at night. He stepped outside to answer it, his shoulders stiff and nervous. When he came back, he smiled too quickly and said it was nothing. I trusted him then, but I wish I had asked more questions. She arrived on a Tuesday morning with 2 suitcases and no key. Mrs. Miller stood in my kitchen, rearranging everything I owned. "Ethan likes his shirts starched," she said, without looking at me. I looked at Ethan for help, but he just stared at the floor. It wasn't just one visit. She simply stopped leaving. Every morning she was already there, pouring the first cup of tea. I felt like I was arriving late to a life that was supposed to be mine. She just cares about him, I told myself, but it felt like control. I started sitting at the edge of my own dinner table. They talked about memories and jokes that had no room for me. Once I reached for the salt and she moved it away from my hand. "You're lucky to have him," she whispered. "Many better women wanted him." That night I told Ethan, "I feel like a ghost in my own house." He didn't hold me. He just sighed and looked at the wall. "She's old-fashioned, Lucy. You're being too sensitive," he said. I lay in the dark, wondering when I had started disappearing. 3 months later, I couldn't take the silence anymore. "I can't live with your mother in every room of our lives," I cried. Ethan just stared at me like a problem he couldn't solve. That night, I pulled a bag from the closet and started to pack. The bag was half packed when the nausea hit me suddenly. Shaky inhale. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at 2 pink lines on a stick. I was pregnant. A tiny heartbeat was growing inside. I put the bag away. I was staying for the child who chose me. I decided to give our marriage one final chance for the baby. I cleaned the house and cooked Ethan's favorite meal. I lit candles and waited to tell him the news that would change us. But the universe had a different plan for that evening. The key turned, but it wasn't Ethan who walked inside. It was Mrs. Miller, looking at the candles with a cold face. "What is all this?" she asked, her voice like ice. She stood there like she had been waiting for this moment. "I have news," I said, touching my stomach. "I'm pregnant." She didn't smile. She laughed, a cold, loud, terrifying laugh. "That's a lie," she hissed. "My son wouldn't have a child with you." Before I could speak, her hand swung and hit my face hard. For 30 seconds, the world went completely silent. I stood there with the taste of blood on my lip and a burning cheek. "You are safe," I whispered silently to the baby in my womb. I didn't run and I didn't scream. I simply waited for the end. The door opened and Ethan walked in, humming a soft tune.
He stopped when he saw my red face and the overturned candles. "What happened?" he asked, his voice shaking with fear. I didn't say a word. I just let him see the truth for himself. "She fell, Ethan. She's lying to trap you," his mother shouted. She grabbed his arm, crying fake tears to gain his sympathy. Ethan looked at his mother. Then he looked at my bruised face. In that silence, he had to make the most important choice of his life. "I saw it, Mother," Ethan said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I was standing in the doorway and I watched your hand hit her." His mother's mouth opened, but no words came out this time. "That is my wife, and you will never touch her again. If you choose her, you are no longer my son," she screamed. It was the threat she had used to control him his entire life. Ethan looked at her, and I saw a quiet freedom in his eyes. "Then I am not your son," he replied, and he meant it. He opened the front door and pointed to the dark street. "Leave, Mother. Don't come back until you can show respect." The sound of the door closing was powerful. The nightmare was finally over, and the house felt quiet. Ethan walked to me and pressed his forehead against mine. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for every night I let you feel alone." He wasn't just a son anymore. He was finally a husband. We held each other as the candles burned down to nothing. We sat on the kitchen floor and talked for many hours. Ethan talked about the guilt his mother had planted in him. "I was blind, Lucy. I thought obedience was love," he sobbed. We didn't fix everything that night, but we finally started. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter. Ethan was in the kitchen trying to cook breakfast for me. For the first time in months, the house felt like it belonged to us. We were no longer ghosts. We were a family starting over. The weeks that followed were filled with healing and peace. We painted the baby's room a soft yellow, the color of hope. The bruises on my face faded, and my certainty grew stronger. I finally knew where I stood, and I knew Ethan was by my side. But healing is not a straight line. Some nights were still hard. "She's still your mother, Ethan," I told him one evening. "You can love someone without accepting their bad behavior." He looked at me with wonder and said, "You are so strong, Lucy." 4 months later, Ethan's mother called from a hospital bed. "I thought I was protecting him, but I was just afraid," she croaked. It wasn't a perfect apology, but her voice was broken and honest. In her weakness, I finally saw the woman behind the anger. I watched Ethan sit by her bed from the hallway. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself to be free. I didn't want my husband to live with any more regrets. We were ready to leave the past behind us for good. Our son Oliver was born on a quiet, rainy morning. Ethan cried tears of pure joy as he held his son for the first time. We named him Oliver because it means peace, and peace was exactly what we had fought so hard to find. When Oliver was a month old, there was a soft knock at the door. Mrs. Miller was standing there, looking older and very tired. She didn't try to push her way in, she waited for my permission. I realized then that the power balance had shifted forever. I placed Oliver in her arms and watched her hands tremble. "He has your eyes, Ethan," she whispered, tears falling down. Then she looked at me and said, "He has his mother's strength." It was the first kind thing she had ever said to me. Life didn't become a fairy tale, but it became honest and real. She visited us often, but she always called and respected our rules. Ethan was the pillar of our home, standing steady and present. We had survived the breaking point, and we were stronger now.
Family is not about control. It is about respect and love. Sometimes life breaks you, so it can build you back better. My name is Lucy, and I learned that truth always wins in the end. I refused to disappear, and I found my way back home. Thank you for joining us for this story on English Story Hub. If Lucy's journey touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. What would you have done in her place? Let us know below. Remember, the truth always sets you free. Goodbye.